Welcome to Combos from the Couch by LifeStance Health, where leading mental health professionals help guide you on your journey to a healthier, more fulfilling life. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Combos from the Couch. I'm Nicolette Lianza, and according to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, an average of 24 people per minute are victims of rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner in the United States. Now, that's more than 12 million people over the course of a single year. I'm joined today by Yolanda Francic, a LifeStance therapist who brings both professional knowledge and personal experience to this deeply poignant topic of domestic violence. So welcome, Yolanda. Really great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to become a therapist.
In my 20s, I sought out a therapist because I had been in a long-term relationship since high school. Typical high school romance started at about 15, 16 years old. And I got into my 20s and we were not progressing into a marriage like I wanted. And we would break up and get back together and break up and get back together. And it just was not going anywhere. And I felt like I needed some help to get out of that relationship because I was frustrated. I really went to have the therapist help me make him change, which really was the honest truth at the time.
And I appreciate
Um,
you sharing that because I think with lots of people, that might be their intent as they're navigating therapy. Like, how can I get him to change, kind of a thing.
Exactly, which
Got
is
you.
exactly why I went. And then over the course of the therapy, I realized it was really about me and what did I want for my life and where were my boundaries and what was I willing to tolerate and am I going to accept this life? Is this what I wanted? And so I was with her help and her guidance and just making me take a look at myself, answer
Mm-hmm.
some deep, hard questions, I was able to get out of that. And it wasn't easy, took me a while.
Right. I'm
But
sure. I'm sure.
about 27, I finally decided that I'm had enough. And so then I quit my job and went back to school. So I was in college at 30.
Okay.
And then I did my master's degree after that. But in right after that, a couple of years later, I did meet my husband. And then I realized, wow, this is a whole new relationship. I had dated in between, but
Got you. Got
I
you.
was like, wow, this guy's great. So
Sounds
I
like a
married him.
much healthier relationship with your
Oh, yes,
husband.
totally, totally.
Great.
And those high school relationships, you're young, get
Fair point.
stuck.
Very true. And we all can use a little bit of help sometimes. So it
Yep.
sounds like that's exactly what you reached out and you did. So yeah,
Yeah.
great,
Yeah.
great. So as we shift gears to talk about domestic violence, how would you define domestic violence?
Anything it's any kind of behavior that's one partner that is trying to gain any kind of a power or control over the other person. And this can be a man or a woman, but in my experience, it was with women and well, male female partnership there. So anything like physical abuse, which is, it can be as subtle as just pushing or the outward things are hitting and slapping and anything like that, throwing things, any kind of intimidation. There's emotional abuse, which is humiliation, somebody criticizing you for your weight or the way that you look or how you eat or anything like that. Anything that's going to undermine your self worth. So if
Hmm.
you get into a relationship and you're there and you find that you get a sense of that, there are some flags that go up for you. The other things are sexual abuse. If you're being coerced into a sexual relationship, including marital rape, even in a marriage, you have the right to
Yes.
say no.
Yeah.
And that is fairly prevalent.
I think
And
that's a
also,
good point you bring up. I don't think people all always recognize that. Sexual assault, rape can still occur even if the partners are married. So I appreciate
yes.
you emphasizing that. Mhm.
hmm And the other one is economic abuse. And people don't often think about that as abuse because it's money. It's not against their person. It's not the cutting down of somebody. That is just controlling your access or a partner's access to financial resources, which can be money or preventing you from working, or when you do work, taking your money, having to give part of your money, and not having any privacy about your money either.
Mhm.
The other new thing, maybe not new, but it's any kind of technology that's used to harass a person, such as like tracking. We have a lot of the Apple AirTag things or
Mhm.
location settings on your phone. If somebody's requiring you to put those things on your phone, for example, that's an abuse.
Right?
You have a choice to say, no, you're not going to have my location. You either trust me or you don't. So if somebody's
Mhm.
requiring that and you have any kind of sense that's not right and it's not something that you really want to do as a partnership, and you'll sense it, you'll get
Mhm.
that sense about yourself, anything like that. So anything kind of tracking.
Yeah. I appreciate in how you're defining domestic violence that I think people often assume it's just meaning physical, but you just opened up that definition to such a much broader range that I think you're going to have quite a few of our listeners kind of thinking and pondering a little bit more of what that domestic violence could look like. So I appreciate
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So, what do you wish people better understood about domestic violence situations? And why can it be so difficult for victims to leave?
Because it's an insidious situation. It's a gradual, subtle ramping up of the violence. It's a slow creep, typically. You don't even know it's happening. You discount. In a sense, the victims are being groomed. They
Mhm.
are being made to think that what they're feeling is not valid. A lot of times people will come back and make a remark to their partner or disparaging. And when the person says, that's not right, or don't do that to me, they'll laugh it off. Oh, I was just joking. You can't take a joke. You're too sensitive. Don't be a wuss. Don't be a crybaby. Oh, you should be able to take it. This is how we communicate in our relationship. No, that is not the way. Some of the other things is fear. So if you recognize that you're in this relationship, a lot of times people stay because they're fearful about leaving, and maybe that's going to create more violence, or they might have some revenge taken on them or their children. A lot of times these types of abusive people will threaten and use children as the in between. The abusers will often escalate, and when they escalate, they fear losing control. So
Mhm.
that's the crux of it. Some of the other things is manipulation. They use emotional manipulation and trauma bonding to create some confusion and dependency. If, again, going back to money or restricting getting a job, those are things that keep somebody trapped. We talked about the financial dependence, and a lot of scenarios include just tracking of money, or if somebody wants to give you an allowance as a power move, be very aware of that. Now, if you sit down and do your budget and you say, okay, we each get $20 a week for fun stuff or whatever. But if somebody's watching how much you pay for groceries, or you can only have $20 and you have to bring a receipt, that's a flag. That
Mhm.
is, and don't discount that stuff. a lot of times there's the child custody threats.
Yeah.
So if you leave me, I will take the children. I will sue you for rights and custody, and you're never going to see them again. And so a lot of women in this case will stay because they're
Right.
not going to leave their children,
Right.
especially if they feel that this person is abusive in any way. And the other thing is that there's shame and stigma around just being in this type of a relationship. There's a lot of people. Usually, by the time it gets to be really bad, there's isolation from friends and family that have occurred. Are you giving up your friends? Are you being told, no, that person isn't really good for you? You shouldn't be seeing them, or you can't see them. You're not allowed to see them. Be aware of those things. Now, the other thing is societal pressures too. There's a lot of, like I said, shame and stigma around, oh, you're an abused woman, or again, goes for men too. But mostly women, there's shame around that. Like, oh, how
Mhm.
could you have stayed? How could you have
Right.
gotten yourself into this? And again, going back to the first part of this, it's insidious. It doesn't happen. You don't meet the guy and he's mean to you at first.
Right.
This is, he's kind, he's sweet, he comes off wonderful. He's doing everything for you. He takes you out. He's dating you. He's bringing
Right.
the flowers. You're going to dinner.
He's
Uh,
wooing you.
is wooing you or
Mhm.
grooming you.
Oh, yes.
And of course, he's going to put on his best. But once you get in that relationship, things start to change and it comes slowly. It's, hey, honey, I don't think you should go out with, or hey, I think we're spending too much money. I don't think you really need that stuff. Or I'm going to give you an allowance. Or I don't want you to work. You really should stay home and take care of me. So those are some of the things.
Thank you for sharing. There's just so many red flags.
Yes.
Definitely. Can you please share with us your own story related to this?
Yes. On Mother's Day of 1997, my sister was killed due to domestic violence. And looking back, she was slowly acclimated to the abuse, which started again with the love bombing in the early relationship of her marriage. He was the guy that you liked. He came off warm and caring about her and our family. He was in love with her, best thing that had ever happened to him. He was thankful for her. But as the family interacted with him, coming from my standpoint, you'd get together at dinners or out to dinner, and you'd see instances of snide remarks or impatience with her or put downs. They're backhanded. They were never direct or very obvious. They were
Mhm.
very just insidious, is the only
Mhm.
word that I can come up
Yeah.
with. He was sarcastic and abrasive attitude toward her. And then we'd go over to his house and then he'd be complaining about work, and you could see the anger building there about people at work, and then he'd bring that home to her. You'd sit at dinner and you think to yourself, gosh, well, he's just a jerk. But
Mhm.
you wouldn't say anything. You'd see her and you'd be like, oh, okay, I'm not getting in the middle of somebody else's
Mm.
relationship. And then when I asked her about later, oh, they're treating him poorly at work, or he doesn't really mean it. She actually said those things to me. And I'm like, okay, I'm of the personality. I wouldn't have tolerated that. My mindset, maybe it was coming out of my own relationship long term, which again was not abusive, but I just didn't have the tolerance for it. Maybe I'm not that nice. I don't know. She did not label it as abuse because he wasn't physically abusing her. As far as I know, he never hit her. He was just putting her down, making derogatory comments about her weight, criticizing. really just basically wearing her down at
Mhm.
almost every turn. He'd say a kind word, but overall, and we'd come back and they'd get angry over something, slam the cabinets, slam things down, punch the wall, things like that. But he never, that I know of, hit her. When they had kids, on the outside, he was the fun-loving dad. He was the doting father, but now we know, many years later and after the event occurred, their house was filled with verbal abuse. It was just those again, those backhanded comments, "You're fat, you're this, you're not worth anything," yelling and screaming and
Mm.
anger over the littlest things. The dog would be in the way, kind of kick the dog out,
Mm.
just being mean overall. And
Yeah.
you could see the escalation over the years. But again, it wasn't our thing to get involved in. And for those that have somebody in a relationship like this, you need to say something. Do not step back. You need to push forward. Well, the interesting thing with them as a couple is that when they had kids, they didn't spank their kids. This was one of the things that my sister made a point of saying. And she didn't believe in that because she felt it was violent. So they didn't spank their kids. I think she put that boundary in place looking back. I don't think he would have done that had she not been able to convince him of that. But
Okay.
that was one of the things that she was proud of. But at that point, I think that's when she started to recognize things weren't quite right. I don't think that she would have called it abuse, but I think at that point she did start to say, yeah, he's got some anger issues. He flips on a dime, he can be set off. You're walking on eggshells. He was very critical of her and the girls, and he was very selfish. For example, one of the things that she told me about, she was very upset about, and honestly, I couldn't believe this. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" She had told me that against her wishes, after discussing it with him and saying, "This is not something we can afford," he went out and bought a Harley Davidson Goldwing bike.
Mm.
He went and signed the papers without her. And his exact words to her, "You're not going to tell me what I can do."
Mm.
Now, he was retired military, so he wasn't making a ton of money, worked at Walmart
Okay.
part-time. She was
Okay.
working at the naval base, not making a ton of money. They could not afford this. They were barely making it.
Ooh.
I
Wow.
know because she would complain about, "Hey, we can't pay the mortgage," or she'd go to our mom and say, "Can I borrow some money because I can't pay the light bill?" Again, she never showed any bruises or outward signs or anything like that. Like I said, we found out that he threw things, he broke cabinets, there were holes in the walls, things like that, but that was all covered up. So basically for that relationship, it was intimidation, it was verbal abuse, it was emotional abuse. And again, I want to make sure I say this. He was not a drinker. He was not an alcoholic. He was not a
Okay.
drug user. So it was not like he got drunk and got mad. This is
Okay.
who he was.
Wow. I
So
wanna say that almost makes it even worse, and that's weird for me to say that, but just that this is just his character, it
yeah,
sounds.
yes,
Wow.
he had anger issues, and again, it doesn't take alcohol for somebody to be in this kind of a situation. He went to
Mhm.
church. He proclaimed to be a Christian. My mother was the one that led him to the Lord.
Wow.
However, I don't think this was a fault of God. I think this was a fault of his own character and his
Mhm.
own choices.
Yes.
So on Mother's Day weekend, my sister, who had worked at Great Lakes Naval Base in the social services area, she was helping out other military families. She had to go to a conference on anger management. So when she returned, she was excited to share with him what she had learned and said, "Hey, I recognize these things in you, and I think you need to go get some help." She she was very soft with him. She was not a yeller. She wasn't mean. She wasn't sarcastic. Everybody has their own stuff. She wasn't an angel, I'm sure, but she wasn't a mean person where she wouldn't have come after him and said, "You need to do this." So on the Saturday night, she came back and was telling him about this. And I guess it was late. I don't know what time she got back, but it was about probably 10 or 11 p.m. They started arguing. Their girls were at home, about 12 and 13 years old, and they were already in bed. So they had decided to move the argument out into the garage so they wouldn't wake up the girls because apparently it was getting loud. He was getting loud. I don't know if she was yelling back. Maybe she was. They didn't have a super big house. It would have woken the girls up. So they went out to the garage and then they continued to argue for a while. I guess this was about maybe 2 or 2:30 in the morning. So they had been talking and fighting for quite some time. She decided that we're done. We're not making any progress here. I'm tired. We have to just end this. And then she turned around and walked away from him and said, I'm going to go to bed. And he walked over and took about 5, 6 steps, maybe 10 steps. And he picked up an aluminum baseball bat and then he proceeded to hit her. And in his statement, he said, I kept hitting her until she stopped moving.
Whoa. Wow.
That was, it was just unbelievable to us
Right.
because there was no physical abuse up till this point that we knew of.
Wow.
There was no
Wow.
outward stuff. It was all the criticism. It was all the, oh, you're fat. You're
The emotional abuse,
this.
verbal abuse,
Yes,
psychological abuse things.
all of that, and it
Right.
wore her down to where it made her think that she was the problem, that she would at any time could set him off, and it was her fault. It was her fault. She did this. If you wouldn't do that, I wouldn't become angry. If you would lose weight, I would not be frustrated with you. If you were better with the kids, if you made more money,
Mm,
all of those things. And again, not outright physical, but intimidation,
yeah.
financial. He put her in a very desperate place where she could not leave. She did come to me at one point and say, I do want to leave. I want to get a post office box. We were going to do that. She never followed up with me. I didn't press it because I was like, at the time, I'm like, if you don't want to do it, maybe you just got mad or something like that. But she had thought about it. She recognized that this was not right. And again, I think had he hit her outright, she would have left. But again, it's the slow creep. Yeah. So very sad, unexpected, and you just never know.
Yolanda, may I ask, was he incarcerated for the murder?
He did he was arrested, and originally he said that someone had broken in and killed her. So he
Okay.
did try to cover up. He was well aware of what he did. He was very aware of what he did. He did try to say that he had a psychotic break as part of his defense, but the statement that he made to the police when they interviewed him initially in the garage and when they first took him in, and he said, I kept hitting her until she stopped moving, is the awareness that they needed to
Yeah.
convict him of first-degree murder.
And I just want to say thank you for sharing that story, your vulnerability in sharing that story too, for you, your family, your sister's daughters. How has this experience shaped your work as a therapist? And what message of hope would you want to share with others who have experienced similar losses?
I think this has definitely made me more alert to the signs of abuse. So it's allowed me not to discount comments when my clients come in and they say, oh, my husband does this, or he doesn't want me to work, or I have an allowance, things like that. Then it takes me to a place where I can be a more critical thinker and ask different questions to get my clients to think differently, to see differently, different perspectives. As a therapist, we don't tell you what to do. We guide you to your own resolutions, own
Mm.
discoveries, and own
Mhm.
choices. Nobody's going to make you leave that relationship. Nobody's going to tell you that's what you should do, but we're going to guide you to where you discover it on your own and have the strength to do it. Again, I can see like patterns and escalations of behaviors or comments or things that I'm now able to more point out to
Mhm.
clients.
Hope your clients recognize it.
Yeah. As far as hope and healing, my sister didn't make it out, but there there's a way out for anybody in a current situation like this. There's a lot of help and assistance for those that are in a domestic violence situation. There are people out there that are going to help, that really do want to help, that really get it. They understand how hard it is. And there's nothing to be ashamed about because this has been, like I said in the beginning, it's very insidious. So you don't even know what's happening sometimes. But if you're in something like this, get some help because staying in that kind of a situation is not an option.
I
Because,
love that you just emphasized that. It's not an
yeah,
option.
it is not an option. You don't have a choice. You need to get out because you don't know if that person is going to snap, is going to decide today's the day and let their anger get the best of them, lose control,
Right.
get too mad that you're not doing what they want you to do. So it's not an option. You need to get out.
I agree. Any other insights you'd like to share?
Just that if you're in a relationship like this or anyone that is recognizing their loved one in a relationship, even a little bit, don't discount those flags. If you're seeing this, you need to say something to your family member or your friend. Don't, if you're in the situation, don't make excuses for your partner. Don't discount it. Don't say he's had a hard day at work or he's under pressure or whatever it is. You gotta be honest with yourself. You cannot lie to yourself, in essence, and do not for one moment think that because they're not hitting me,
Mhm.
that what you're experiencing is not abuse or that you might not end up losing your life.
I agree. Yolanda, thank you so much for sharing your story, your sister's story, and how her loss has affected you and your family. I know so many of our listeners are going to walk away so touched and so heartfelt from this story that you're also helping them become more aware of their own relationships as well and looking out for signs. So thank you again for sharing this story with us.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me, and I hope our story inspires somebody to get out,
Yes.
and can be a wake-up call for somebody else because you
Yes.
never know.
You never know. Thank you again. I'd also like to thank the team behind the podcast, Jason Clayton and Juliana Winnan. Thank you for listening to Converse from the Couch. Please take care, everyone.